The galaxy was a vast, chaotic place where countless species vied for power and dominance. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most influential civilizations, maintained a fragile peace through treaties, diplomacy, and a network of warships that patrolled the stars. Yet, for all their might, none had ever faced anything like the human warship Iron Will. When humanity first made contact with the galactic community, they were seen as a minor species, primitive, reckless, and disorganized. Their technology was far behind, their society fragmented by old conflicts and petty rivalries. But humans had one thing that no other species seemed to understand: sheer, unyielding determination. The Iron Will was born out of that very spirit, a ship unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't the biggest or the most advanced, but it was designed with one purpose: survival. The ship's armor was layered with an alloy developed from a rare earth metal, capable of withstanding direct hits from plasma cannons. Its weapons were a blend of ballistic and energy technologies, designed to overwhelm both energy shields and physical defenses. Most impressively, its AI was not just adaptive, but learned from every battle, constantly reconfiguring strategies to exploit enemy weaknesses. But the most terrifying thing about the Iron Will was its crew. Hand-picked from Earth's finest soldiers, engineers, and strategists, they were relentless in their mission to protect humanity. Commander Sarah Blake led them, a woman who had survived the blood wars on Earth and had seen more combat than most galactic generals. Her reputation as the Steelheart wasn't just for her stoic demeanor, but because she never gave up, no matter the odds. The ship's first test came when the Ithari, a warlike species with a penchant for conquering weaker planets, targeted Earth. They underestimated the humans, as everyone did. In a bold move, Commander Blake took the Iron Will straight into the heart of the Ithari fleet. Their flagship, the Pride of Stars, fired a beam that could slice moons in half, but the Iron Will shrugged it off like a breeze. Blake ordered a direct charge, ramming into the enemy ship and discharging a shockwave that fried the Ithari's systems. The Pride of Stars shattered like glass. News of the Ithari defeat spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to test this new human warship. The Council ordered a tactical evaluation, sending 5 of their best ships to subdue the Iron Will. Blake, as always, didn't wait to be attacked. She struck first, using the ship's advanced cloaking to slip behind enemy lines. One by one, the elite ships fell, their wrecks floating aimlessly through space. The Galactic Council panicked. They convened an emergency session, debating whether humanity posed a threat to the peace they had worked so hard to maintain. Finally, they made a decision that shocked the entire galaxy. The Iron Will was to be banned, along with any human warship that even remotely resembled its design. Humanity was labeled as a rogue faction, too dangerous to be part of the galactic community. Back on Earth, Commander Blake looked at the decree with a grim smile. "So they're afraid of us," she muttered. "Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before coming after our home." The Iron Will didn't cease to exist, of course. It became a legend, a ghost ship that appeared whenever humanity was threatened, a grim reminder to the galaxy that Earth would never bow. The Council, in its arrogance, had made one critical mistake. They thought banning the ship would break humanity's spirit. Instead, it only fueled their resolve. The galaxy would learn, one way or another, that humans never quit. Blake leaned back in her command chair, watching the stars pass by. She knew the Council's forces would be hunting them now, but it didn't matter. The Iron Will was more than just a warship. It was a declaration. Humanity was here to stay, and they would fight to the last breath to protect their freedom. The galaxy hadn't banned a warship. They had banned a spirit, one that could never be conquered. The Galactic Council's decision to ban the Iron Will was intended to send a clear message to humanity. Their aggressive spirit and reckless courage were not welcome among the stars. But instead of fear, it ignited a fire within humanity's soul. Earth's leaders condemned the decree, declaring that they would not be bullied into submission. Meanwhile, the iron will remained on the move, never staying in one place long enough to be trapped. Commander Sarah Blake stood on the bridge, arms crossed over her chest, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Her crew was unusually quiet, processing the implications of the Council's decision. Lieutenant Rafael Mendez broke the silence first. "So, we're outlaws now?" he asked, his voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. Blake turned to face him, her steel-gray eyes as unwavering as ever. "Outlaws? Heroes. Depends on who you ask. But we're still soldiers, and our mission hasn't changed. Protect Earth at all costs." Lieutenant Commander Nadia Lee snorted from her station. "Funny how the galaxy didn't mind us being small and weak. The second we show some teeth, they label us as a threat." Blake allowed herself a thin smile. "That's because they never thought we'd make it this far. They see our determination as a danger. Maybe they're right." Suddenly, an alert flashed on the screen. A priority transmission. Blake gestured to Mendez, who opened the channel. The face of Admiral Jonathan Reed appeared, his expression grave. "Commander Blake," he began, skipping the pleasantries. "The Council isn't just banning the Iron Will. They're deploying an armada to hunt you down. We estimate at least 15 ships from different factions, including the Ithari and the Krell Coalition." Blake didn't even flinch. "Expected as much? Are they aiming to attack Earth directly?" "Not yet," Reed replied. "But they've positioned blockade fleets around the Sol system. They think cutting off our home will force you to surrender." Blake smirked. "They clearly don't know us. Any chance of reinforcements?" Reed's face hardened. "Negative. Most of our ships are either blockaded or pinned down by political pressure. You're on your own." Blake nodded, not showing the slightest hint of disappointment. "Understood, sir. We'll keep them busy out here. If they want the Iron Will, they'll have to work for it." The transmission ended, and Blake faced her crew, her voice carrying the calm, unwavering authority that had seen them through countless battles. "You heard the Admiral. They're coming for us. But we're not going to make it easy. Set course for the Viridian Nebula. We'll use the gas clouds to mask our movements." As the ship jumped to warp, Mendez shot her a curious look. "You really think we can take on 15 ships?" Blake gave him a sidelong glance. "We're not fighting them head-on. We're going to make them question why they even bothered. Hit and run. Ambushes. Let them wear themselves out while we stay sharp." Lee grinned, her fingers dancing over the weapons console. "Now that sounds like fun. Think they'll send their best?" Blake's eyes gleamed with cold determination. "They have no choice. They'll want to make an example of us. Let's make sure it's one they'll never forget." The Iron Will dropped out of warp within the nebula, surrounded by swirling green gas and electromagnetic storms that played havoc with sensors. Blake knew this terrain well. She had specifically chosen it because it was treacherous for anyone unfamiliar with the area. They would lie in wait, silent as a predator. Hours passed before the first blip appeared on the radar. A Krell destroyer, scouting ahead of the main fleet. Blake kept the ship powered down, drifting in the nebula's magnetic fields to avoid detection. As the Krell moved closer, Lee whispered, "They're scanning, but they're not picking us up." "Hold," Blake ordered. When the destroyer passed within optimal range, she snapped her fingers. "Fire!" A single kinetic rail slug tore through the destroyer's engine core, and the ship erupted in a brilliant flash. Before the light faded, the Iron Will was already repositioning deeper into the nebula, like a ghost that had never existed. Within minutes, multiple signals flared up, patrol groups scrambling to find the attacker. Blake watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. They had no idea where to look, and she intended to keep it that way. As the Armada pushed deeper into the nebula, the crew remained tense but focused. Blake leaned forward, her voice soft but cutting through the tension like a blade. "Let them come. They think we're just another warship. They have no idea they're hunting something far more dangerous. Let's show them why they banned us." From the depths of the nebula, the iron will prepared its next strike, patient and unrelenting. Blake knew this would be a long, brutal game of cat and mouse, but in the end, the galaxy would learn one truth. Humans didn't just fight wars. They survived them. And survival was something the Iron Will did better than anyone else. The Viridian Nebula stretched out like a vast, swirling ocean of emerald light, hiding the Iron Will within its turbulent folds. The nebula's dense gas and unpredictable electromagnetic storms made it the perfect hunting ground for a ship designed to strike from the shadows. Commander Blake moved between the bridge stations, ensuring her crew remained sharp. Lieutenant Rafael Mendez kept a close eye on the sensor arrays, which were barely functional in the nebula's interference. Lieutenant Commander Nadia Lee monitored weapons and power distribution, her fingers ready to unleash hell at a moment's notice. "Status on the enemy fleet?" Blake asked. Mendez squinted at his screen, adjusting filters to cut through the interference. "They're splitting into smaller groups, probably to cover more ground. Most are staying within communication range of each other, but a few stragglers are venturing out." Blake's lips twisted into a sly grin. "That's the problem with too much caution. They spread themselves thin. We'll take out the stragglers and make it look like an accident. Keep them paranoid." Mendez hesitated. "You really think they'll fall for it? These are elite warships." Blake gave him a cool, confident look. "It's not about them being elite. It's about them being afraid. They know they're chasing a legend. Fear makes even the best second-guess themselves." She straightened up. "Helm, bring us in close to that isolated cruiser. No active emissions. Lee, prep an EMP burst. We'll disable them before they know what hit them." The Iron Will glided through the nebula like a phantom, its black hull blending into the dark gas clouds. The Krell cruiser loomed ahead, scanning the nebula with bright beams of light. Blake allowed them to drift closer, her crew holding their breath as the enemy ship slowly passed by. "Now," Blake ordered. The Iron Will unleashed a precise electromagnetic pulse, crashing into the cruiser's systems. The enemy ship flickered, its lights dimming and engines sputtering. Blake gave the next command instantly. "Fire a slug through their reactor core. Make it quick." The kinetic railgun fired, piercing the cruiser's hull with a single devastating shot. The reactor detonated in a bloom of fiery light, debris scattering through the nebula. Blake wasted no time. "Reposition. Move us through that magnetic storm and mask our trail." As they drifted deeper into the nebula, communications traffic from the enemy fleet spiked. Panic was setting in as they struggled to understand how one of their most powerful cruisers had just vanished without a trace. Lee chuckled under her breath. "They're freaking out. Some of them think it was an accident. Others are saying it was sabotage." Blake nodded, satisfied. "Good. Let them argue. The more divided they are, the easier it will be to pick them off." A new signal suddenly emerged on the display, much stronger than the others. Mendez tensed, recognizing the signature. "Ma'am, that's the Hammer of Dominion, Krell flagship. They're calling for all ships to regroup and secure the nebula exit." Blake's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to box us in. They must think we're trying to break out and make a run for it." Mendez looked at her, uncertain. "Are we?" Blake allowed herself a dark smile. "Number, we're going straight for their flagship." Lee blinked in surprise. "You're kidding. That thing's packing enough firepower to turn us into vapor. Blake's voice was cold steel. That's why they think they're safe. No one would dare attack the hammer head-on, which is exactly why we're doing it. The crew exchanged glances. Tension mingled with admiration. Blake's reputation as the Steelheart wasn't just because of her unwavering resolve. It was because of her willingness to defy every tactical convention when it suited her. She moved to the holotable, highlighting the hammer's position. They'll be expecting a frontal assault or an ambush from behind. We'll go underneath, through the dense core of the nebula. It's risky, but they'll never expect it. By the time they realize we're right beneath them, it'll be too late. Mendez grinned despite himself. That's insane. I love it. Blake glanced over the crew, seeing the fire return to their eyes. If we take out their flagship, the rest will scatter. They're running on fear right now. Let's give them a reason to break. As the iron will descended into the thickest part of the nebula, the ship trembled from electromagnetic turbulence. Sparks flew from overloaded systems, but the crew remained focused, adjusting power levels and stabilizing the hull. For hours, they crept through the storm, every minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, the hammer of Dominion loomed above them, its massive thrusters humming like a beast ready to pounce. Blake took a deep breath. Lock onto their engine cluster. We're going to cripple them before they even know we're here. Lee grinned and adjusted the targeting systems. Locked, waiting on your command. Blake hesitated just long enough to savor the moment. Then her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Fire! The iron will unleashed its full fury, kinetic slugs and plasma bursts ripping through the flagship's thrusters. The hammer lurched, its engines spewing fire and debris. Before they could retaliate, Blake ordered a sharp ascent, bringing the iron will up and over the crippled ship, targeting its bridge with a final salvo. The flagship erupted into a catastrophic fireball, its death throes lighting up the nebula like a dying star. The remaining enemy ships fell into chaos, some retreating, others sending out distress signals. Blake watched the destruction unfold, her expression grim but satisfied. Send a message to the Council, she ordered. Tell them the Iron Will isn't running. If they want us gone, they'll have to fight for it. Mendez sent the transmission, his hands still trembling from the adrenaline. Lee exhaled a shaky breath, laughing softly. They wanted a ghost to hunt. Now they've got a demon. Blake gave a slow nod, her gaze fixed on the remnants of the flagship. Let them come. We'll be ready. As the shattered remains of the Hammer of Dominion drifted through the nebula, the galactic frequencies buzzed with chaos and disbelief. Commanders from various factions argued over what had just happened. The Krell, furious at the loss of their flagship, demanded immediate retaliation, while other captains questioned the wisdom of pursuing a ship that had just annihilated their strongest war vessel. Commander Sarah Blake stood at the bridge of the Iron Will, listening to the intercepted transmissions with a grim expression. Lieutenant Mendez shook his head in disbelief. They're in complete disarray. Some of them are even accusing each other of sabotage, he reported, still stunned by the outcome. Blake allowed herself a slight smile. Good. Let them tear each other apart. We just did them a favor. They just don't realize it yet. Lieutenant Commander Lee looked over from the weapons console, still riding the high of victory. The Krell aren't going to let this go. They'll regroup eventually, maybe even call in reinforcements from their homeworld. We can't stay here. Blake nodded. We've made our point. They underestimated us, and it cost them. Now we need to move before the Council sends more ships to track us down. Plot a course to the Acheron belt. The asteroid field will give us cover while we make repairs. As the Iron Will prepared to jump, Mendez hesitated, glancing back at his commander. Ma'am, do you think the Council will just give up after this? Or will they send even bigger guns? Blake looked at the chaotic transmission logs one last time before giving a cold smile. Oh, they'll send more. But now they're afraid. They'll hesitate, debate, and argue while we pick them off one by one. That fear is our advantage. The ship lurched into warp, leaving the wreckage of the Krell flagship behind. The crew busied themselves with repairs and maintenance, adrenaline slowly giving way to exhaustion. Blake took a moment to herself in her quarters, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. She couldn't afford to relax. The galaxy was vast, but not vast enough to stay hidden forever. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, and the comm screen flickered to life. Admiral Reed's face appeared, looking more weary than usual. "Commander," he greeted, his tone both stern and respectful. "Admiral," Blake replied, keeping her expression neutral. "I assume you heard the news?" Reed gave a grim nod. "The entire council is in uproar. The Krell have vowed vengeance, and some factions are calling for Earth's immediate sanctioning. The council's blaming us for destabilizing the peace." Blake raised an eyebrow. "Peace? The same peace that let warlike species like the Ithari and Krell crush anyone they wanted? Funny how it's only called peace when the strong are in control." Reed sighed. "You know how politics work. They're not interested in fairness, just maintaining their power. Your actions with the Iron Will have shown them how fragile that power really is. They'll never forgive you for it." Blake's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask for their forgiveness. Our mission was to protect humanity, and that's exactly what we're doing." Reed hesitated, glancing around as if making sure he wasn't overheard. "Listen to me carefully, Blake. The Council is discussing a more drastic measure. There's talk of a coalition fleet, dozens of ships from multiple factions, all converging to hunt you down. They want to make an example of the Iron Will." Blake's expression didn't change. "Let them come. We'll keep making them bleed until they realize this isn't a war they can win." Reed's gaze softened, and for a moment he looked almost proud. "Just be careful, Sarah. You're not just a commander anymore. You're a symbol. The Council might hate you, but people on Earth and beyond are starting to see you as a hero. They're rallying behind the idea that humanity won't be pushed around anymore." Blake allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. "Good. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that we're not just survivors. We're fighters. And we don't quit." Reed nodded, his face hardening again. "Take care of your crew. I'll keep buying you time back here, but the Council's putting pressure on our allies to turn against us. Trust no one outside your ship." With that, the transmission ended, and Blake was left in the dim light of her quarters, pondering the Admiral's words. A symbol? She hadn't asked to be one. She just wanted to keep humanity safe, even if it meant being labeled as a rogue. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of warp, and Lee's voice came over the intercom. "Commander, we've reached the Acheron belt. No hostile signatures detected, but the place is a mess. Lots of drifting rock and old mining debris." "Understood," Blake replied, getting to her feet. "Start repairs and keep us cloaked. I don't want any surprises." When she returned to the bridge, the crew was already busy conducting diagnostics and patching up minor hull breaches. Mendez gave her a tired smile as she approached. "Never thought I'd say it, but I think we might have actually scared the Council. They're scrambling to respond." Blake looked out at the drifting asteroids, her mind already calculating their next move. "Fear is temporary. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll come at us with everything they've got. We have to be ready." Lee snorted. "Let them try. We just blew up a flagship and made fools of their best tacticians. I say bring it on." Blake didn't answer, her thoughts already spinning through strategies and contingencies. The Council wouldn't rest until the Iron Will was nothing but floating scrap, and until then, they would hunt her like a rabid beast. But if they thought she would go down quietly, they had underestimated her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for humanity's right to exist without fear. As long as she drew breath, she would make sure the galaxy remembered one simple truth. The Iron Will wasn't just a warship. It was a promise that humanity would never be broken. The Acheron Belt was a sprawling graveyard of forgotten ambitions, abandoned mining rigs, shattered asteroids, and remnants of old, derelict ships. It stretched out like a maze of twisted metal and drifting rock, perfectly suited for a warship that didn't want to be found. The Iron Will lay cloaked within the densest part of the field, its hull camouflaged against the rugged terrain. Commander Blake leaned over the tactical map, studying potential ambush points and chokeholds. Lieutenant Rafael Mendez had rigged the sensor arrays to detect even the slightest disturbances among the floating debris. Lieutenant Commander Nadia Lee was busy recalibrating the weapons systems, making sure they were in peak condition after the last brutal engagement. "Status report," Blake ordered, her voice as steady as ever. Mendez adjusted his headset, his eyes glued to the data feed. "Repairs are coming along. Hull integrity's back to 93%. Engines are stable, and the railguns are recalibrated, still working on recharging the plasma batteries." Blake nodded. "Good. We'll have to assume they'll find us sooner or later. Any word from the Council frequencies?" Lee smirked without looking up from her station. "Nothing but political squabbling and finger-pointing. The Krell are blaming the Uithari for poor coordination, and the Uithari are accusing the Council of underestimating us. It's chaos out there." Blake allowed herself a slight grin. "Let them keep arguing. The more they bicker, the less unified their response will be. If we're lucky, they'll waste time organizing before launching another offensive." But luck wasn't something Blake relied on. Deep down, she knew the Council would eventually put aside their differences and come for them. The trick was to stay a step ahead, forcing them into situations where their own arrogance worked against them. Her thoughts were interrupted by Mendez stiffening at his station. "Ma'am, I've got something. Detecting a faint energy signature. Looks like a ship, maybe a scout. Trying to mask its presence, but it's definitely not debris." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Can you pinpoint its position?" "Working on it," Mendez replied, fingers dancing over the controls. "They're good, using the asteroid drift to mask movement, but they don't know we're tracking them." Blake weighed her options quickly. "Lee, prepare the EMP cannon. We'll disable them before they can send out a signal. Mendez, maintain visual and be ready to jam any outgoing transmissions." A tense silence fell over the bridge as the unknown ship glided closer, hugging the shadow of a massive asteroid. Finally, Mendez gave a sharp nod. "Got a lock. It's a Yathari scout frigate, lightly armored, mostly recon gear." Blake made her decision. "Fire EMP, now." The Iron Will hummed as the electromagnetic pulse fired, lighting up the void with a shimmering wave of energy. The scout ship jolted violently, its lights flickering before going dark. Blake gave the next command instantly. "Reel them in with the grappling array. I want to know what they were doing out here alone." Lee triggered the magnetic harpoon, and the Iron Will latched onto the disabled ship, pulling it in like a fisherman hauling in his catch. Blake led a boarding team herself, stepping onto the scout's bridge with her rifle at the ready. The Yathari crew were slumped over their consoles, unconscious from the EMP shock. "Secure them," Blake ordered. "Lee, pull whatever data you can from their logs." Within minutes, Lee's voice crackled over the comms. "You're going to want to see this, Commander. Looks like they weren't just scouting. They were laying down sensor beacons, trying to map our position in the belt." Blake frowned. "How many beacons did they place?" Lee's response was grim. "At least 4 active. If they finish triangulating, the entire belt will light up like a beacon for the Coalition fleet." Blake felt a chill run through her. They were being boxed in. Again. And this time, if the Coalition located them, there would be no time to escape. She returned to the Iron Will, her mind racing as Lee continued her analysis. They were transmitting partial data bursts to a relay buoy deeper in the belt, Lee reported. We take out the buoy, and we stop the data from reaching the main fleet. Blake nodded, already plotting the next move. Destroying the buoy isn't enough. If we just shoot it, they'll know we're in the belt. We need to make it look like an accident, like the buoy failed on its own. Mendez chimed in. We could send out a signal burst mimicking a power overload. That would fry the circuits and look like a malfunction. No one would suspect sabotage. Blake smirked. Do it. And while you're at it, see if you can plant a false signal. Make it look like we left the belt and headed toward the Argon cluster. That'll throw them off our scent. As the crew worked on the deception, Blake stared at the stars outside the viewport, knowing they had narrowly escaped being trapped again. The Council wasn't stupid. They were learning from every encounter. Each time they survived, the noose tightened a little more. Finally, Mendez reported success. Buoy's been fried, and the false trail's in place. If they're tracking us, they'll be chasing shadows for a while. Blake exhaled slowly, tension easing from her shoulders. Good work. Let's relocate to a deeper position within the belt. We'll stay dormant for a while and let the heat die down. As the Iron Will moved through the maze of asteroids, Blake felt a growing weight in her chest. This fight was more than just survival now. It was about proving that humanity would not bow down to tyranny and fear. The Council wanted them to be an example, to show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the established order. But Blake knew that fear could be turned around. Every battle they survived, every flagship they destroyed, only served to fan the flames of rebellion. Other species, oppressed and ignored, were starting to take notice. Perhaps it was time to stop just fighting and start rallying. Humanity couldn't stand alone forever. If they were going to challenge the Council's rule, they would need allies, species that had been ground underfoot and forced to live in submission. Blake glanced at the crew, her expression hardening with determination. Send out encrypted signals to the old resistance networks. Tell them the Iron Will is alive, and we're looking for anyone brave enough to fight back. Mendez looked up, surprised. You think anyone will answer? Blake's gaze was unwavering. They will. We've been proving something important out here, that the Council can be hurt. Once they realize that, they'll be more than willing to strike back, and we'll be leading the charge. As the crew set to work broadcasting the call to arms, Blake couldn't help but feel the spark of hope ignite within her. The Iron Will wouldn't just be a ghost haunting the Council's nightmares. It would become a symbol, a banner under which the oppressed and beaten down could rally. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and soon they would learn that Earth wasn't just a minor world. It was a forge where warriors were born and legends were made. The encrypted signal pulsed through the void, bouncing off derelict relays and buried comm buoys, an open invitation to anyone brave enough to defy the Council's grip. Blake knew it was a risk. Broadcasting their presence, even indirectly, could draw the Coalition fleet straight to them. But fear and caution weren't going to win this fight. Humanity needed allies, and allies needed a call to action. The crew of the Iron Will remained tense as the hours stretched on. Mendez busied himself with routine maintenance, but his eyes kept drifting back to the comms console. Lee cleaned and calibrated her rifle for the 4th time. Her nerves just barely kept in check. Blake paced the bridge, her thoughts racing faster than any ship could travel. Finally, a ping echoed through the silence. A response. Mendez jumped to the console, disbelief coloring his tone. Commander, we've got a hit. Actually, more than one. Looks like at least 3 different factions are trying to respond. I'm routing them through the decryption filters now. Blake moved closer, her heart thudding in her chest. Who are they? Mendez scanned the data streams, eyes widening. One is a resistance cell from the Velush Prime colonies, mostly refugees and former council soldiers who broke ranks. Another is from the Renari Free League. They've been resisting Krell occupation for decades. And damn, this one's from the Orion Cartel. Lee let out a low whistle. The cartel? Aren't they just a bunch of smugglers and outlaws? Blake smirked. Maybe, but they hate the council as much as anyone. If they're willing to fight, we'll take their help. Mendez hesitated. Should we respond to all three? Yes, Blake said firmly, but keep transmissions short and encrypted. Tell them we're alive, we're fighting back, and if they want to join the resistance, we'll meet them at Point Kappa in the Near Us system. It's a remote mining outpost, abandoned for years. Low profile. As Mendez relayed the message, Lee raised a skeptical brow. You really think they'll show up? It could be a trap, or worse. They might sell us out for council credits. Blake's eyes hardened. Maybe. But fear isn't going to win us allies. We're taking the chance. 3 days passed with nothing but silence, tension coiling tighter around the crew like a vice. Blake barely left the bridge, constantly analyzing star charts and scouting for signs of pursuit. Lee ran combat drills, keeping everyone sharp, while Mendez monitored the galaxy's news feeds, looking for any hint of the Council's next move. Finally, the Iron Will made its cautious approach to the Near Us system, gliding through the debris field of an ancient mining catastrophe. The dusty planet loomed ahead, its surface scarred and pockmarked from decades of neglect. Blake ordered them to maintain cloaking and hover just above the surface. If this was a trap, they needed a quick escape. One by one, ships appeared on the long-range scanners. Mendez let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They're here! Velosh Resistance Frigate, Renari Strike Craft, and, yep, Orion Cartel Gunship. No hostile movements. Blake nodded. Open a secure channel. Let's see who we're dealing with. The screen flickered to life, and 3 faces appeared. One a rugged Velush commander with fierce, scarred features, another a lithe Renari pilot with sharp, calculating eyes, and finally a human woman with a sly grin, tattoos winding up her neck. The cartel representative. The Velosh commander spoke first. We thought you were a myth. The Council's been spreading stories about your destruction for weeks. Blake gave a grim smile. Funny how they lie when they're scared. We're alive, and we're fighting back. Question is, are you? The Renari pilot cut in. We've been resisting Krell domination for years, but without real firepower, it's been hit and run at best. You blew up a flagship. That's more than we've ever managed. The cartel woman shrugged, flashing a crooked grin. Council's been tightening trade lanes and cracking down on smugglers. They're bad for business. If making them bleed puts credits in our pocket, we're in. Blake crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. This isn't just about one battle or one flagship. We're starting a war, a real war. The Council's ruled through fear and brutality for too long. We're done being hunted. We're going to hunt them instead. The Velosh commander hesitated. You're asking us to go from resistance fighters to open warfare. You know what that means, right? If we fail, they'll exterminate us. Blake didn't flinch. They'll try regardless. The difference is whether we make them regret it. We've proven they can be hurt. Now we need to show the galaxy they can be beaten. Silence hung between them, and then the Renari pilot nodded slowly. You have our ships, whatever it takes. The cartel woman smirked. As long as we get our cut, the cartel's in. It's about time someone shook things up. The Velosh commander finally gave a short, grim nod. If the humans are willing to fight to the end, we'll stand with you. Better to die on our feet than live under their boots. Blake gave a curt nod. Good. We'll set up a command relay here and start coordinating attacks. Hit supply lines, disrupt communications, sabotage their shipyards. We make them stretch thin and bleed for every inch of space they think they control. As the call ended, Lee let out a low chuckle. "We just formed a resistance army out of a bunch of outlaws and rebels. Can't say I saw that coming." Blake looked out at the battered ships forming a loose formation around the Iron Will. A small, fragile alliance, but one born of desperation and a shared hatred for tyranny. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Mendes leaned back in his seat, a hint of a smile on his face. "Do you really think we have a chance?" Blake glanced at him, her expression fierce and unwavering. "If there's one thing I've learned from fighting the Council, it's that they're not invincible. They rule by fear and obedience. If we break that, if we show the galaxy they can be defied, they'll lose control faster than they think." She turned back to the bridge, her mind already forming battle plans and rallying calls. The resistance would be a spark, and if nurtured, it would ignite the fire that would burn the Council's regime to ashes. The Iron Will wasn't just a warship anymore. It was a beacon of rebellion, and Blake intended to make sure the entire galaxy saw its light. The Iron Will and its newfound allies lingered in the Neras system, their ships scattered and cloaked amid the debris of the old mining colony. Blake knew they couldn't stay put for long. Any signal, any misstep, could give away their position. The makeshift resistance fleet needed coordination and a clear strategy. In the small, cramped war room aboard the Iron Will, holographic projections of their new allies flickered into existence. The Valash commander, Torak Kral, leaned forward, his expression grim. "We've seen Council retaliation before. If they catch wind of this alliance, they'll send a full battle group to wipe us out. We need to hit them hard and fast before they can regroup." The Renari pilot, Shal Ren, crossed her arms, her slender frame tense with wary determination. "I agree. The Krell are already consolidating forces in the Azura sector. If we wait too long, they'll steamroll us. We need to strike first, hit their logistics, disrupt their supply chains." The Orion cartel leader, Mira Kane, smirked from her holo feed. "Supply chains are our specialty. The cartel can hit trade routes and weapon depots, but we need intel, locations, patrol schedules. Otherwise, we're just shooting in the dark." Blake nodded, tapping a point on the star map. "I've been analyzing Council fleet movements. They've overextended trying to hunt us down. The Krell lost their flagship, so their morale is low. We target their repair yards in the Ankara system, take out their ability to fix their ships, and they'll be forced to retreat." Torak grunted in approval. "Bold. They'll be vulnerable while regrouping, but they won't leave those yards unguarded." Blake's eyes sharpened. "That's why we don't hit it head-on. We draw them out first, stage a diversion at the outer sensor relay. When they move their defense fleet to intercept, we sweep in and hit the yards directly." Mira gave a sly grin. "That's our cue. The cartel can fake a convoy raid, make it look like we're going after supply ships. That'll force them to send their defense forces to protect the trade route." Shale chimed in, her tone cautious. "While they're distracted, my Renari strike team can sabotage their station's power core. No shields, no comms. Easy pickings." Blake nodded, satisfied. "Good. We'll move in as soon as the shields go down and destroy their critical infrastructure. Once the yards are gone, we fade back into the nebula. Keep them chasing ghosts." The plan was set, and the resistance moved swiftly. The cartel freighters prepared decoy runs while the Renari strike team equipped their ships with EMP torpedoes. Torak's Valash fighters formed a defensive screen, ready to pounce on any pursuers. The Iron Will would hang back, ready to unleash hell when the time was right. Hours later, the strike began. Cartel ships darted through the trade lanes, feigning attacks and broadcasting false signatures. As predicted, the Krell defense fleet scrambled to intercept, leaving the shipyards woefully underprotected. Shal's team slipped through the gaps, darting between patrols and planting EMP charges on the primary power conduit. Blake watched the tactical feed with a keen eye, tension humming through her veins. "Stand by, wait for the signal," she ordered, her crew poised for action. The explosion lit up the void. A brilliant blue surge as the station's power core short-circuited. Shield generators flickered and died, and emergency lights blinked in desperation. Blake didn't hesitate. "Full burn. Attack pattern Omega. Let's finish this." The Iron Will roared forward, railguns and plasma cannons thundering as they tore into the exposed structure. Velash fighters followed, strafing the hull and targeting weak points. The shipyard's defense turrets tried to come online, but without power, they remained cold and silent. As explosions ripped through the station, a distress call went out. One Blake had been expecting. The Krell fleet was doubling back, realizing too late they'd been tricked. Mira's cartel ships jumped to new coordinates, scattering to avoid pursuit. Shale's Renari craft made a fast exit, having completed their sabotage. Blake turned to Lee. "Target their main reactor. Let's make sure this yard is nothing but scrap." Lee grinned, fingers dancing over the targeting controls. "Locked. Firing." A massive railgun slug punched through the central core, and the entire structure collapsed inward, fire blossoming from ruptured fuel tanks. Blake allowed herself a breath of satisfaction as the shipyard disintegrated. Mendez scanned the incoming data, his face lighting up. "They're retreating. The Krell ships are breaking formation. They're scrambling to regroup." Blake nodded, keeping her voice calm. "Pull back to the rally point. Let them chase shadows. We've done enough damage for one day." As the Resistance fleet regrouped in the nebula, cheers erupted over the comms. Torak's voice was rough, but pleased. "That was a clean hit. Their repair yards are history. Krell Command won't recover from this for months." Mira chimed in, her voice full of satisfaction. "And Council logistics are in shambles. I'm already seeing chatter about supply shortages and delayed reinforcements. Nice work, Commander." Blake couldn't help the flicker of pride. "This was just the beginning. They'll come back angrier, more determined to crush us. But now we know we can hurt them. Keep your team sharp and mobile. We're not giving them the chance to pin us down." After the comms went quiet, Blake took a moment to lean against the viewport, her reflection barely visible against the endless stars. This victory had been significant, but it also marked the start of something bigger. The Resistance had proven it could strike fear into the Council's heart. But fear alone wouldn't be enough to win the war. Lee walked over, giving her a wry look. "Not bad for a bunch of misfits and rebels, huh?" Blake gave a faint smile. "They're more than that now. They're soldiers. Soldiers with something to fight for. We just lit the fire. Now we have to keep it burning." Lee glanced out the window, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "You think more will join us now, after hearing about this hit?" Blake nodded slowly. "They will. The galaxy's been waiting for someone to take the first step. We just showed them that the Council isn't invincible. They bleed just like anyone else." As the crew worked to repair the ship and regroup, Blake couldn't help but feel that shift, the subtle change in momentum. The Council was losing its grip, and the cracks were starting to show. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were fighting back, and the galaxy was taking notice. The Iron Will was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol, and as long as it sailed through the stars, hope would burn brightly among those who dared to dream of freedom. The galaxy trembled as the news of the shipyard's destruction spread. Factions that had once quietly endured the Council's oppressive rule were stirred into action, inspired by the daring strike led by the Iron Will and its growing alliance. Rumors of the legendary human warship spread like wildfire, and whispers of rebellion reached even the most remote star systems. The Council, humiliated and desperate to reassert control, convened an emergency summit. Representatives from every major faction debated and argued, but behind closed doors, their fear was palpable. They had underestimated humanity, and now it was costing them dearly. Meanwhile, aboard the Iron Will, Commander Blake reviewed reports of uprisings on distant colonies, miners taking up arms, civilians sabotaging council infrastructure, and even some military deserters joining the cause. The resistance had become more than just a few rogue ships. It was growing into a movement that the council could no longer ignore. Admiral Reed's face appeared on the holoscreen, looking more exhausted than ever, but with a spark of pride in his eyes. "Blake, whatever you did out there, it's working. The council's losing its grip. They've declared martial law in half a dozen systems just to keep order. They're panicking." Blake leaned back in her chair, a rare smile on her lips. "Good. The more they crack down, the more people will push back. They've ruled through fear long enough. It's time they learn what real fear feels like." Reed nodded, his expression growing serious. "But they're not giving up. They've authorized a coalition superfleet, hundreds of ships from every faction. They're calling it Operation Iron Tomb. Their sole purpose is to hunt you down and obliterate the Iron Will. They're rallying at the Epsilon Drift as we speak." Blake's jaw tightened, but there was no fear in her eyes. "If they're putting all their strength in one place, they'll leave other territories exposed. We'll use that. Make them think we're hitting critical points across the galaxy while we draw them away from vulnerable systems." Reed hesitated before speaking again. "Are you sure about this? You're going to be facing overwhelming numbers." Blake gave a fierce, determined look. "It's not just about winning battles. It's about proving that they can't control us. If the Iron Will has to go down, it'll go down as a legend. And by the time they realize they've wasted their forces on one ship, rebellions will be lighting up like wildfire across the galaxy." As the transmission ended, Blake gathered her crew and allies, briefing them on the final mission. They would use decoy ships to simulate strikes at multiple locations, spreading chaos and confusion, while the Iron Will itself made one final stand at the Epsilon Drift. It wasn't a plan for survival. It was a plan to shatter the Council's morale, to make their victory so costly that it broke their power forever. The fleet gathered at Epsilon Drift, a massive armada of warships, bristling with firepower and commanded by the Council's finest admirals. As the Iron Will emerged from warp, alone and defiant, the Council broadcast a final warning. "Surrender now and your crew will be spared. Continue to resist and you will be annihilated." Blake stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "This is Commander Sarah Blake of the Iron Will. To every soul out there listening, know that we did not bow, we did not break, and we will not surrender. We fight not just for humanity, but for every being that yearns for freedom. If you believe in living without fear, rise up. Fight back. Make the galaxy remember that we did not die quietly." With that, the Iron Will charged headlong into the fleet, weaving through laser fire and plasma blasts, striking like a vengeful phantom. Each hit it landed was precise and devastating, destroying ammunition depots, shredding command ships, and sending shockwaves through the coalition ranks. But even the mighty Iron Will couldn't hold out forever. One by one, systems failed. The hull was breached, and the engines sputtered. The ship was dying, but its spirit remained unbroken. As the bridge shuddered around her, Blake gave her final command. "All remaining power to the main cannon. Target the flagship. Let's make our last shot count." The Iron Will fired one final blast, piercing the coalition flagship's core. The massive warship erupted in a blinding explosion, sending debris cascading through the battlefield. As the Iron Will burned, transmissions flooded in from across the galaxy, uprisings igniting, fleets rebelling against Council rule, colonies declaring independence. The Council had won the battle but lost the war. The legend of the Iron Will. The warship too strong, too defiant to be conquered, spread like wildfire. The galaxy's oppressed no longer felt alone. They had seen the impossible happen, a single ship standing against the might of the galaxy, and proving that tyranny could be challenged. In the years that followed, the Council fractured and crumbled under the weight of endless rebellions. The name of Commander Sarah Blake became a rallying cry, a symbol of unyielding resistance. Though the iron will was gone, its spirit endured, in every battle, every uprising, and every act of defiance. Humanity and its allies did not just survive, they thrived, reclaiming their right to exist without fear. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. That freedom was not given. It was taken, earned through fire and resolve. And so the Iron Will lived on, not as a ship, but as a legacy, one that burned brighter than any star, reminding the universe that humanity could never be conquered. The Galactic Council meeting was in full swing, an extravagant display of power and diplomacy as representatives from countless star systems argued over the fate of a small, seemingly insignificant planet on the outer edge of the Orion Arm. Earth. The Sarak delegate, a towering figure of sinewy muscle and glistening scales, sneered as he addressed the assembly. "We've monitored this backwater rock for centuries. Primitive, divided, weak. They struggle to even reach their closest planetary neighbors. Their species is no threat to the galactic order," he declared, receiving approving murmurs from several other factions. Ambassador Hrix of the Arcani, a race renowned for their intellectual superiority, adjusted his neural diodes and spoke with a tone dripping with condescension. "Earth is not worth our resources or concern. Their technology is rudimentary at best. We should move forward with planetary integration or simply eliminate any resistance." But it wasn't the dismissal that was surprising. It was the silence that followed when the representative from the Coalition of Independent Systems spoke. Ambassador Juno, a sharp-eyed, steel-voiced woman with a reputation for strategic cunning, leaned forward. "Is that what you truly believe?" Hrix tilted his head, confused. "Of course. Are you implying that these humans are anything more than a curiosity?" A slow, almost mocking smile crept onto Juno's face. "You think Earth is defenseless? You're wrong." The room erupted into laughter, loud and unabashed, from species who had conquered entire star clusters and rendered civilizations extinct. The Sarak ambassador pounded a clawed hand on his podium. "Your coalition is known for its sympathies to weaker races. Are you telling us that you've allied with Earth out of pity?" Juno didn't blink, didn't even flinch at the insult. "Pity? Number respect." Silence fell again, this time curious rather than mocking. Juno activated her holo display, projecting reports and footage from deep space probes. 5 cycles ago, an Arcani probe disappeared near Sol. You assumed it was a technical fault. The reality? It was shot down. Hrix scoffed. "Impossible. No Earth weapon could detect our stealth systems." "That's what we thought, until we examined the wreckage. The projectile that hit it? Simple, kinetic, but the targeting system? That was human ingenuity at its finest. They didn't detect the ship. They predicted its path, calculated it based on gravitational anomalies and energy signatures, shot it down from a planetary surface with a railgun prototype." Murmurs swept the chamber, disbelief mixed with intrigue. Juno swiped through more data. Images of wrecked scout ships, interference patterns jamming communication arrays, and human ships escorting alien refugees away from conflict zones. They've been reverse engineering stolen tech, integrating it with their own innovations. We underestimated them because they looked primitive. But humans, they adapt faster than any species I've seen. You know what they've been doing? Learning from every mistake, studying us. While we dismissed them, they've been preparing. The Sarak ambassador growled. "A few lucky shots and scattered reports don't make them a threat. They are nothing but animals playing with fire. Juno straightened. Her expression hardened. You thought Earth was defenseless. You thought humans would be crushed by the first sign of interstellar war. But you don't understand them. Their history is nothing but conflict, survival, rising from the ashes. When the Zarnak invaded their colony on Mars, humans didn't beg for help. They destroyed the Zarnak forward base with explosives rigged from mining charges. The council chamber buzzed with uneasy energy. The Sarak ambassador snarled, frustration clear on his face. They're reckless, desperate. That's not strength. Is it? Juno shot back. You think their unpredictability is a weakness. It's what makes them dangerous. They don't follow predictable patterns. They don't submit. And when backed into a corner, they fight like demons. Your arrogance blinds you. Humans are not to be underestimated. And if you bring war to their doorstep, they will make you pay for every inch. As the council murmured and whispered, the realization began to dawn on some. Earth wasn't defenseless. It was a powder keg, waiting for the right spark to explode. And the galaxy had just begun to notice. Juno gave one last warning before leaving the podium. Mark my words, underestimate humanity, and it will be the last mistake you ever make. She left the chamber in silence, but the weight of her words lingered long after. The council knew they had a choice to make. Peace or war. One would strengthen their alliance, and the other would ignite the most unpredictable force the galaxy had ever seen. Back on Earth, the mood was different. In a sprawling underground command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Mark Donovan stared at the array of holographic displays in front of him. The room buzzed with energy as technicians and analysts monitored deep space feeds and tactical reports from the farthest human outposts. Colonel Reyes approached, her face set in a grim expression. General, we've just intercepted another transmission from the Galactic Council. It seems they're still debating our fate. Mark gave a short, humorless laugh. Debating whether to crush us or ignore us, you mean? Typical arrogance. He rubbed his temples, his graying hair a testament to years of stress and war. Any word from Ambassador Juno? Yes, sir. Her message is clear. Some of them still think we're easy pickings, but she managed to sow enough doubt to buy us time. The Sarak and Arcani delegations are the most vocal about taking action against us. Mark clenched his jaw. Figures. The Saharak want to dominate, and the Arcani want to preserve their so-called intellectual superiority. They won't accept humans disrupting their precious order. Reyes hesitated. Sir, there's something else. The scout ships we intercepted last week. They were Arcani. Advanced cloaking, top-tier surveillance tech. They've been probing our outer colonies, testing our defenses. Mark's fists tightened. They're looking for weaknesses. They're not just curious, they're planning. We can't let them catch us off guard. Reyes nodded. We've increased patrols along the Mars corridor and have repositioned the orbital defense platforms around Earth and Luna. Admiral Chen is overseeing the final upgrades to the railgun network. Good. If they come, they'll find we're not as helpless as they think. Mark turned back to the central display, where a map of the solar system pulsed with incoming data. He couldn't help but think of the early days, back when humanity was still scrambling to build reliable space travel. They'd been naive then, thinking they were alone. The first contact wars had shattered that illusion, and the brutal reality of the galaxy had forced Earth to become something entirely different. Survival had meant adapting, not just copying alien tech, but improving it, pushing it to new limits. Humans didn't just absorb. They innovated, twisted, and weaponized everything they learned. And the galaxy had no idea just how much they'd advanced. Sir, Reyes interrupted his thoughts. We've received word from the mining colonies on Titan. They've detected unusual gravitational signatures, likely a cloaked fleet. It matches the Sarek energy profile. Mark's eyes narrowed. They're testing our response. Prepare the Titan defense grid. Activate the decoy satellites. Let's see if they're bold enough to take the bait. Reyes gave a curt nod and began issuing orders. Within minutes, the Titan grid was humming with energy, railguns and missile platforms powering up while false energy signatures danced around the perimeter. Mark watched the screens intently. The Sarak were known for their brute force tactics, always charging in when they thought they had the upper hand. If they took the bait, it would give Earth a critical opportunity to study their fleet composition and battle tactics. Suddenly, a technician shouted, "Incoming transmission from the Sarak flagship. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Mark ordered. The hologram flickered to life, and the image of the Sarak warlord filled the room, massive, scaled, and bristling with weapons. His yellow eyes glared through the screen. "Humans," he growled, voice rumbling like thunder. "You cower on your pathetic world, hiding behind your toys. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths swift." Mark stepped forward, his own gaze unyielding. "We don't surrender, Warlord. And if you think Earth is defenseless, you're about to learn just how wrong you are." The Warlord bared his fangs, snarling. "Bold words for prey. We will crush your defenses and raze your cities to the ground." "Try it," Mark replied, his tone colder than space itself. "You'll find that humans don't break. We bite back." With a savage roar, the Warlord cut the transmission. Mark glanced at Reyes, who gave a firm nod. "Orders, sir?" "Hold fire until they cross the inner perimeter. Let them think we're too afraid to strike first. Once they're committed, we'll hit them with everything we've got. And send a message to Ambassador Juno. Let her know the Sarak are making their move." As the war drums of the Sarak echoed across the solar system, Mark knew that Earth's fate hung in the balance. But he wasn't afraid. Humanity had faced extinction before, and every time they'd clawed their way back from the brink. This time would be no different. The Sarak fleet emerged from their cloaking fields with brutal efficiency, a wall of spiked warships cutting through the darkness of space. Titan loomed in the background, its thick atmosphere swirling with methane storms. But the Sarak didn't care about the planet. They wanted blood. From the command deck of the Obsidian Claw, Warlord Korak snarled as he watched the human defenses light up on his screens. Weak, scattered energy signatures flickered across the Titan grid, nothing that could challenge the might of his armada. "Forward! Break their lines and make them beg for mercy!" Korak barked, his clawed hand striking the command console. His officers hissed in excitement, eager to taste the glory of conquest. But something wasn't right. One of his tacticians hissed with unease. "Warlord, the energy signatures, they're erratic. Some of them are fluctuating without consistent power output." "Malfunctioning, no doubt," Korak snapped, dismissing the thought. "Their technology is a cobbled-together mess. Humans are barely out of their infancy." He watched as his ships moved in perfect formation, sleek black vessels bristling with plasma lances and electromagnetic cannons. The lead warships surged forward, preparing to unleash a torrent of firepower on the scattered human outposts. And then, all at once, the decoy satellites shut down. The Sarak fleet hesitated, confused, when suddenly the real defense grid activated. A perfect sphere of railgun fire and missile salvos erupted from Titan's surface, slicing through the void. Korak snarled as two of his destroyers shattered, debris scattering into the icy rings of Saturn. "What is this trickery?" he roared. Back on Earth, General Mark Donovan watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "They took the bait," he murmured. Colonel Reyes stood beside him, eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They're trying to reorganize, but our interference field is scrambling their communications." "Good," Mark replied. "Keep up the pressure. Launch the orbital bombers from Europa. Target their rear formations. We'll herd them right into the kill zone." In space, The Sarak fleet struggled to regroup. Korak growled, slamming his fist into the console. "Deploy countermeasures! Scatter and flank! These humans dare to humiliate us?" As the Sarak ships dispersed, a second wave of human ships appeared on the long-range sensors, Europa's bomber wing, dropping kinetic projectiles that streaked through space like fiery comets. The Sarak rearguard shattered under the relentless barrage, explosions painting the darkness with vivid orange and yellow bursts. Warlord Korak roared in fury. "How? How did they anticipate our attack pattern? They're supposed to be mindless savages," his second-in-command hissed, a trace of fear in his voice. "Warlord, they're using unpredictable tactics. Their formations change constantly. We can't get a lock on their patterns." Korak's jaw tightened as he struggled to comprehend the chaos unfolding before him. The humans were supposed to be weak, an afterthought. But they fought like demons, turning every mistake into an opportunity. The Sarak were powerful, yes, but they relied on brute strength and unwavering confidence. Humanity's unpredictability shattered that confidence like glass. "Signal the fleet to fall back to the rally point," Korak commanded, hating himself for the order. "We must regroup and reassess." Before his officers could comply, a new signal pierced through their encrypted channels. A human transmission, calm and mocking. General Donovan's voice resonated through the command deck. "Running away already? I thought the Sarak were supposed to be fearless warriors. Guess I was wrong." Korak's eyes blazed with fury. "You dare speak to me as an equal human filth?" "I'm just reminding you that picking a fight with Earth was your mistake," Donovan replied coolly. "You thought we'd roll over and die. But here's a lesson for you. Humans don't surrender, and we don't forgive." The transmission cut out, and the obsidian claw shuddered as more railgun slugs hammered its shield.